Why is it that so many people struggle to believe their thoughts can actually affect physical matter? Maybe you've questioned this yourself, but here's the thing you're not somebody who settles for surface level explanations. You're here watching this video because you sense that there's a deeper connection between your mind and the physical world. So stick around and you'll discover that the idea of your thoughts influencing physical reality isn't just some philosophical notion, it's a tangible truth backed by compelling evidence. In our last video, we delved into the depths of the subconscious mind, revealing how aligning with this hidden powerhouse can propel you forward towards your goals with unprecedented ease. We explored practical techniques to tap into this silent partner, transforming it into your most potent ally. But today, we're taking it a step further by exploring how your mind doesn't just influence your own body, but can actually extend outward to affect your entire environment. Imagine understanding your body not just as a biological machine, but as a responsive instrument finely tuned to your mental states. What if you could harness this knowledge to improve your health, enhance your well-being, and even influence the world around you? So stay tuned because as we dive into part 14 of our modernization of Thomas Troward's Edinburgh lectures on mental science, we'll delve into the fascinating relationship between mind and matter, bridging the gap between the invisible and the visible, the inner and the outer. Some people find it hard to believe that our thoughts can actually affect physical matter. But if that's not possible, then mental science wouldn't exist, since its main goal is to improve our bodies and our environment through the power of the mind. Basically, we're aiming to make real, visible changes in the world that's aligned with divine law, God. So one of the most important things we need to understand is the connection between what's visible and what's invisible, between our inner selves and the outer world. And sure, metaphysical arguments suggest that such a connection must exist. We've explored this thoroughly throughout this series. And after all, how else did everything come into existence? The whole universe and us is really proof of this big truth. But let's be honest, abstract reasoning doesn't always convince everyone. It's a lot more compelling when we can back it up with something more concrete. So let me share a few examples of how the physical and the mental are connected. And while this topic is huge and we can't and won't cover everything here, these points should be enough to show that these abstract ideas have real world facts behind them. Now, in Thomas Troward's, original Edinburgh lectures on mental science, he dives quite deeply into this instrument called the biometer, which was invented by the late Dr. And I apologize, I'm going to mispronounce this name, but Hippolyte Baraduc. He was a renowned French scientist. And, this device was said to demonstrate what he called the vital current, a universal force flowing through every living organism that we could control with our willpower. And while at the time this was new, groundbreaking, and it might be worth a trip down the rabbit hole in your own time, it's actually pretty interesting. But we're going to take a look at this video at some more recent examples that really illustrate the connection between the mind and matter. And one of the most convincing modern proofs comes from the field of neuroplasticity, which studies how our brains change in response to our thoughts and experiences. So, for example, researchers have found that practicing mindfulness meditation can physically alter the brain's structure. Studies using MRI scans have shown that regular meditation increases the thickness of the prefrontal cortex area of the brain associated with attention, decision-making, and emotional regulation. And this means that our mental activities are not just fleeting thoughts. They're not insignificant and meaningless. They can lead to tangible physical changes literally in our brain's anatomy. And Similarly, we can consider the placebo effect, which at this point is a well documented phenomenon where patients experience real improvements in their health after receiving treatments with absolutely no therapeutic value, simply because they believed that they were receiving real medicine. And this effect highlights how our beliefs and expectations can trigger physiological responses in the body, demonstrating a clear link between mind and matter. Another compelling area is psychoneuroimmunology. Say that 3 times fast. But the study of how our mental states affect our immune system. And research has clearly shown that stress and negative emotions can actually weaken our immune response, making us more susceptible to illness. And on the flip side, positive emotions and thoughts can boost our immune function. And this, again, clearly suggests that our mental attitudes directly influence our physical health. Now, I'm not going to dive into all the scientific details here. What's important is that these direct examples show that there's a direct link between our mental state and the physical world, whether it's changes in brain structure due to meditation, physiological responses triggered by belief, or the impact of emotions on our immune system. The bottom line is the same. Our minds have the power to influence our bodies and the world around us. Our physical body is like a machine designed to turn our inner mental power into outward actions. And medical science tells us that our entire body is crisscrossed by a network of nerves acting as communication channels between our inner self, our mind, and the functions of the physical body. And this nervous system is actually 2 systems. You might have heard these systems talked about before, but one of the systems is called the sympathetic nervous system, which handles all the stuff we don't consciously control, like digestion and cell repair. Thank goodness we don't have to remember to digest the last meal that we ate, right? Our sympathetic nervous system does that for us. The other is the voluntary or the cerebrospinal system, which deals with conscious perception from our senses and lets us control our movements. And this system is centered in the brain, while the sympathetic system is centered in a mass of nerves behind the stomach called the solar plexus, sometimes referred to as the abdominal brain. So the cerebral spinal system is the pathway for our conscious mind, and the sympathetic system is the pathway of the subconscious mind. But for our conscious and subconscious minds to interact, there needs to be a link between their corresponding nerve systems. And one major connection is the vagus nerve. And this nerve starts in the brain as part of the voluntary system, helping us control our vocal cords. So you can thank it for your ability to sing in the shower. But then it goes down into the chest, sending branches to the heart and the lungs. And finally, as it passes through the diaphragm, it loses the outer coating that marks it as a part of the voluntary system, and it merges with the sympathetic system. And this makes it a bridge between the 2 systems, effectively uniting us physically into one whole being. Similarly, different parts of the brain correspond to our conscious and subconscious mind activities. Generally speaking, the front part of the brain handles our conscious thoughts, while the back part deals with the subconscious stuff. The middle part, it does a bit of both. Our intuition comes into play in this upper area between the front and back parts of the brain. Physically speaking, this is where intuitive ideas come in. And at first, these ideas are vague and general, but our conscious mind still picks up on them. Otherwise, we wouldn't notice them at all. Nature then tries to shape these ideas into something more definite and usable. So our conscious mind grabs onto them and triggers a corresponding signal in our voluntary nervous system. And this, in turn, induces a similar signal in the involuntary system, effectively passing the idea over to the subconscious mind. The signal that initially went from the top of the brain to the front, then through the voluntary nerves to the solar plexus, now reverses direction. It goes back up the solar plexus through the sympathetic system to the back of the brain. This return signal indicates the action of the subconscious mind. And if we could peek inside the top of the brain, we'd find the corpus callosum, a shiny band of brain tissue. And this is where the subjective and objective meet. As the signal returns from the solar plexus to this point, it's brought back to the conscious part of the brain in a new form, transformed by the subconscious mind's silent alchemy, if you will. So the idea that was once vague is now clear and workable. The conscious mind then, using the frontal brain, the area responsible for analysis and comparison, works on this well-defined idea to unlock its hidden potential. This brings us to a great reflection point. Think of a time when a subtle feeling or intuition turned into a clear insight after you gave it more thought. How does recognizing this process influence your understanding of how your conscious and subconscious minds interact? Now keep in mind that I'm talking about our mental self as we know it, in our physical bodies, even though there's probably a lot more to explore about how it might work in other states. But for everyday life, we need to consider ourselves as we are now. From this perspective, the way our body's physiology corresponds to our mind's actions is important. So even though ideas originate purely in mind, we shouldn't forget that on the physical level, every mental action involves a corresponding molecular change in the brain and in both parts of the nervous system. As the old Elizabethan poet said, "The soul is formed, and doth the body makes." This suggests that our physical body is a mechanical setup specifically designed to harness the powers of the soul, just like a steam engine is built to use steam power. Recognizing this give and take, between the soul or mind and the body is the foundation of all spiritual or mental healing. That's why studying how this mechanical setup works is an important part of mental science. But remember, the body is the effect, not the cause. At the same time, it's important to note that sometimes cause and effect can switch places, like how the same device can generate mechanical power when electricity is applied or generate electricity when mechanical power is applied. Here's why this matters and why I'm bringing it up. Actions that start out as voluntary often become automatic over time. They move from our conscious mind to our subconscious and set up permanent resonance there. Modern neuroscience has uncovered fascinating insights into how our brains are not fixed but are incredibly adaptable, a concept known as neuroplasticity. Every thought we think doesn't just fade into the ether, it leaves a physical imprint on our brain's structure. When we repeatedly entertain the same thought, we're reinforcing specific neural pathways, strengthening them much like muscles are strengthened through exercise. And over time, these pathways become well-worn mental grooves, making it easier for the same type of thoughts to occur automatically. Think of these neural pathways as trails in a forest. The more you walk a particular path, the clearer and more accessible it becomes. And conversely, the paths that you neglect become overgrown and harder to find. Once these grooves of thought are established, they influence our thinking patterns and behaviors on autopilot, often without us even realizing it. This automatic flow of energy through established neural circuits can perpetuate habits, both good and bad. And herein lies another great reflection point. What recurring thoughts do you have that might be forming grooves in your brain? How can you consciously shift your thinking to create positive neural pathways that support your goals and well-being? This is why it's so crucial to be mindful of what we consistently think about. Negative or unwanted thoughts, they're not harmless. They're actively carving out neural pathways that can lead to ingrained habits and patterns of behavior that really don't serve us. On the flip side, by intentionally focusing on positive and empowering thoughts, we can create new pathways that lead to healthier habits and a more fulfilling life. As we conclude our deep dive into this intricate relationship between mind and body, we've uncovered how our thoughts are not just fleeting mental events. They have real, tangible effects on our physical selves. We've explored how mental attitudes can influence everything from the neural pathways in our brain to the very cells that make up our bodies. By understanding this profound connection, we gain the power to consciously shape our health, our habits, and ultimately our lives. But this is just one layer of a much larger tapestry, if you will. If our minds can influence our bodies so profoundly, what is it that influences our minds? Where do those spontaneous flashes of intuition actually come from? What is the source of the imagination that fuels our creativity and our innovation? This brings us to the next exciting chapter of our journey where we'll dive deeper into the soul. In part 15, we'll delve into the essence of our being that goes beyond the physical and the mental. We'll explore how the mind itself is an instrument adapted to higher power, a power that stimulates our mental faculties in ways we might not even be consciously aware of. We'll look into how our intuition and imagination serve as gateways to this higher realm, capturing ideas from the infinite and presenting them to us to shape and manifest. We'll also discuss how aligning our will with this higher power can unlock limitless possibilities of knowledge and creativity. By understanding the soul's role in our lives, we can begin to tap into inspiration that transcends our usual ways of thinking, opening doors to insights and innovations that can transform not just our own lives, but potentially the world around us. So are you ready to journey deeper into the core of your being? To explore the source of your highest thoughts and wellspring of creativity? I'll see you in part 15. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want to dive even deeper into the mastery of mental science, go to betterthought.com and subscribe to my newsletter. Not only will you find bonus material to complement what you just learned, but you'll be notified as soon as the next video in this series is released. So go to betterthought.com now and subscribe so we can continue this journey together. Until next time, Godspeed.